Randumb Rants. Like and subscribe. Now, when you're doing research on certain characters, in this particular case, I was actually doing my research on Rachel. Aunt Rachel, of course, right? From Family Matters. And, you stumble across certain episodes, key episodes in the character's life. And you just like, man, I this person deserves an episode, And Jimmy Baines definitely deserves his own episode. Yes, Jimmy Baines from Family Matters. Some of you guys might not even remember this character, and hopefully you don't, because then this video will serve you, And we got to take it back. This is season 2, episode 22, right? And you guys probably don't really remember this episode because it's not really centered around Steve Urkel. It's not. He's rarely in this episode. He's in it now, but he's rarely in it. And this is, like I said, it's during season 2. This is when they had the extended theme song. Now, this is a weird part of the show. I don't know if you guys remember. You guys probably only used to the "As Days Go By, It's the Bigger Love of the Family." But boom, boom, boom. Y'all know, y'all familiar with that, right? But in that season 2, it was an extended version, right? They was like, "As days go by, a bigger you, a bigger me, a something, 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 something family." I don't know the words right. But then they, and it's like, if you guys really remember these episodes and like you're watching it on the reruns, whenever you see the extended version of the theme song, you're like, oh God, it's an earlier episode and it's probably not going to be a good one. See, I've always looked forward to the latter episodes of Family Matters and whatnot, right? Not those last 2 seasons, but the latter episodes. Those were better for me. But these early episodes, there's some key episodes. And this is one of them. Okay? Jimmy Baines, Family Matters, right? We don't really have to start with his background. Some characters don't even deserve that. Let's just say he was born on a farm. You guys see the picture, right? Hey, it's Randumb Rants, baby. You know what we do. And that leads us to the actual episode, right? Carl's doing push-ups, right? And he gets a knock at the door. What do you know? It's this guy. Jimmy. He's like, "Hey, Carl, it's me, Jimmy. You don't remember me?" And Carl's sitting there looking like, I don't know who you are. He's like, "It's me, Jimmy Holmes. Lee Huxley Holmes' father. He already made himself in the house." And it's an awkward moment of silence when they sit down, right? And Carl's like, "Well, can I offer you a beverage, sir?" Like, he's pretending like he knows him, And Jimmy says, "Yeah, why don't you get me what you and Lee used to guzzle down when you guys were kids?" And Carl is like, "Dude, who are you? Like, who are you?" But he's like, "Okay." And he walks in the kitchen and he's like, "Harriet, Harriet's, mind you, she's minding her business, doing what she has to do. Harriet, there's a guy on the couch saying that, he remembers me and I remember him and I really don't know who he is." And she's like, "Well, Carl, why are you in here? I mean, he could be stealing. You are police." And it's so crazy. Like, the fact that Carl even allows him into the threshold of his house, like, dude, you're a police officer. Don't let the gray hair fool you. Criminals come in all ages. You're a police officer in Chicago, buddy. in Chicago. And Harriet's like, dude, why are you in here telling me? You need to be in there watching our stuff, our belongings, our personal stuff. And Carl is like, look, Harriet, please come out here with me and talk to him. Ask him some questions. He don't really know you. Nobody knows you, Harriet. You know, even though you're the reason why we have this show. You know, this is what, maybe like the second episode based around you. And we're in season 2, you know? And Harriet is like, all right, you know, you see I'm seasoning the roast for the Italian beef sandwiches for later on, but whatever, we'll save this for tomorrow. Now we won't be eating anything, but I'll entertain you. I'll entertain you, Carl, you know? And she goes out there. And Harriet meets Jimmy Holmes. She's saying, hey, nice to meet you. And Jimmy's all choked up. He's like, it's an honor and pleasure to meet you. You are such a beautiful lady. You know, one thing about Jimmy is going to overact, right? But him and Harriet is going to compete. But we'll get to that scene, right? Nonetheless, though, right? Let me stay on topic. So Harriet sits down and she asks Jimmy, she's like, so what brings you to Chicago? And Jimmy gets the line, I'm a bush pilot. And, you know, I'm in town. I'm just here to buy a new plane. You know, I fly fishermen to remote areas in Alaska, some of the greatest fishing in the world. And as he's talking, he's staring at Harriet, almost inappropriately, right? And she's like, yes. And, you know, he's like, I'm sorry. You know, Harriet's like, you're staring at me, creep. And Carl, like, I married you, like, you're police, protect me. And Jimmy gets in his defense mode. He goes to plan B. See, that was plan A. He goes to plan B. And he starts complimenting the house. He's like, no, I was mesmerized by the lovely decor in the house. Because he knows that Harriet, you know, more than likely decorated the house, right? I think it's safe to say that, right? And Harriet is like, wow, that's funny because I did. You know, I decorated the house. Thank you. And Rachel walks in. Just so happened to walks in, right? And she's like, hey, I didn't know you guys had company, you know? I didn't know. I've never saw this guy in my life, clearly, right? So I'm sorry, you know, I'm just bumping in and whatnot. How you doing? And Jimmy Holmes, like, Carl's like, no, this is Jimmy Holmes. This is a stranger that I allowed in our house. And Rachel, you know, she says, oh, well, I hope he's hungry. Because, you know, I have a restaurant. And it's Osobuco night. And nobody paid for this, okay, at my restaurant. So I had to bring it here. Hopefully you guys will eat it, you know? And Carl is like, Osobuco? What is that? And we're going to have a picture of Osobuco so you guys can see it, right? And Jimmy, he's like, oh, Carl, that's a veal stew. And I'm homeless and hungry. Let me help you with those bags, Rachel. You know, and you know, he goes and helps Rachel, and Harriet and Carl is like, who the hell is he? Because I don't know who he is, you know? And the next scene is even more crazier, right? The next scene is even more crazier. Jimmy, he's still in the Winslow's household, right? And he's full off the veal stew, and he's full of lies. He has little Richie on his lap, okay? Rachel just met this man a scene ago. Okay, fed him. He has your son on his lap. And it's a rare occasion, okay? This is the Winslow household. Every single member of the family is in the living room. It's like Christmas Eve. Even Steve is there, right? And they're listening to this guy, Jimmy, this stranger, spew lie after lie after lie after lie. He's like, oh, you know, my legs was busted and I was stranded in Alaska wilderness. I was 30 kilometers away from the nearest town. And Steve jumps in and he's like, oh, that's 18.4 miles away. And Jimmy politely stops him. He's like, Steve, you're going to have much more episodes about you, buddy. Please sit this one out. I'm begging you. Okay? This one is about me and Harriet and Rachel. This is only season 2, Steve. Steve, they're going to have endless episodes about you. Just chill out. Please, man. Please. Because Steve, you know, once he get that spotlight and he get a little camera time, he taking it. You know, that's Steve Urkel. So, yeah. He like, I cut myself a crutch. He go back to his lab, right? He's like, man, I cut myself a crutch and I started limping back to civilization. And I get about 8 kilometers. And Steve cuts him off again. He's like, that's 3.3 miles. And Laura's like, look, all right now. Remember, you was just a stranger not too long ago, Steve. And when you was a stranger, we showed you respect, okay? We even gave you a couple episodes. Okay, so just relax. Like, give him the same respect we gave you. And Steve is like, all right, respect. Like, all right, I get it. This episode isn't about me. You know, finally, Steve, it clicks in Steve. Like, this episode isn't about me. Okay, right? So, Jimmy is lying like a politician. He's like, oh, so then all of a sudden, I heard a move behind me. And you know he has little Richie, right? He like, I turned around and there was a 10-foot tall grizzly bear. And he lunged at me. And I hit him with the lash, a Bowen lash, you know. And the bear took the lash out of him and he ate me. And then he proceeds to touch little Richie inappropriately. You guys can see it right there. This dude is a stranger. Carl Winslow, you are a police officer. Do something. Damn. Like, your son got the weakest fade in Chicago, bruh. And you just let this man walk in your house. Now he's inappropriately touching your nephew, Richie. Now, Eddie, he's lame. Okay? He's lame. He's entertained by these lies as if his father isn't a real cop. You know, you can get a real story from your father, you know. But so he's like, yeah, Mr. Holmes, do you have any more stories? And Lion Jimmy moves to plan C. He moves to plan C. And plan C is a place to sleep. Okay? And he says, oh, well, I do, but I got to hit the old dusty trail. And the family, of course, is disappointed. Even Judy's there. And Jimmy says, you know, I'm going to stay at a motel. Rachel's like, well, hold on. You stayed at a motel? And Harriet cuts her off like, yeah, you can always stay here on our couch. This is when Carl should have been a man and should have said, no. We don't know this guy. He cannot sleep on our couch. But clearly, Carl doesn't wear the pants in his relationship. And we will get on the marriage. You know, we'll get on Harriet and Carl eventually. Okay? And, you know, Carl, he doesn't stand up. You know, his best friend is Steve Urkel, right? Obviously, right? His best friend's a kid. So Carl doesn't stand up for the house. And Jimmy's like, oh, no, I can't. I can't sleep here. Knowing damn well his plan is in full effect. He knew it was in full effect. And Harriet insists, she's like, please stay here. And in the next scene, you see Jimmy put his dirty, filthy cowboy boots on the Winslow's couch. No respect, right? And Carl comes in, you know. He says, hey, Jimmy, there's a half of banana cream pie in there. You know, if you want a piece. And Jimmy, he's a freeloader. He says, oh, well, it's funny you said cream pie, Carl. It's funny you said cream pie. You don't really remember me, do you, Carl? And Carl is like, no. Dude, who are you? That's the real reason I came downstairs. I dressed it up to offer you the pie, but I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even sleep. You know, who are you? And Jimmy says, Carl, my name isn't Jimmy Holmes. And I don't have a son, Carl. My name is Jimmy Baines. And I'm Harriet and Rachel's father. Yep. That's Harriet and Rachel's father. And don't worry. We're going to go into the older pictures. That's why I spared you guys in the beginning. But first, you know, Carl is like, hold on. What do you mean? Like, this is my wife. Like, you're her father. He grabs his stuff like, dude, you got to get out my house, man. And Jimmy's like, hold on, let me explain myself. Can I at least prove it to you? Harriet's favorite cookies is chocolate chip. And Carl's like, whose favorite cookies isn't chocolate chip, you know? And then he says, Carl. Rachel had a goldfish named Chubby. And Carl says, lucky guess, knowing damn well he didn't even know that. Like, I'm not married to Rachel. You telling me that like I care. You could have just made that up, buddy. And then Jimmy hits him with the blow, right? Jimmy says, their mom name is Darlene, and they were both born at Regis Memorial Hospital by Dr. Thomas Bradshaw. And Harriet got a small scar above her left knee when she fell off her tricycle. And Carl knew. Carl was like, okay, for you to know that, you may really be their father. And he's like, well, Harriet told me her father transitioned. And then Jimmy proceeds to tell him, well, when I was 18, I married Darlene. And we had problems from the get-go. She thought having kids would make things better, but it made things worse. And I stuck it out for 5 years, but when Harriet was 3 and Rachel was 1, I bailed out. And he was lying to Carl. I mean, a part of that is true, but now let's actually show the pictures. They were young. This is the 50s. They were young. Okay? And Jimmy is right. Miss Darlene thought having kids would actually stop Jimmy from his devilish behavior. See, in the great words of Sammy Davis Jr. on the song Mr. Bojangles, when it comes to Jimmy Baines, I believe Sammy Davis said it best. You see, son, I drinks a bit. And then he shook his head. Lord, when he shook his head. See, that's a little bit before y'all time. That's that Mr. Bojangles, right? But yeah, getting back on topic, Jimmy Baines was an alcoholic. Crazy off the moonshine in Chicago in the 50s. He's in little speakeasies. He's getting it from wherever he can. And he was an abusive drunk. Miss Darlene was actually happy the man left. But let's get back to the actual, because you see, I gave you guys the picture and I gave you guys some background now. Right? Now let's get back to the actual sitcom. Because Carl Winslow is a stand-up guy. He's a great father. And he's telling Jimmy, like, no, you abandoned Rachel and Harriet. And Jimmy's saying, well, I sent money and I called. And one day Darlene said, stop calling. Stop calling, Jimmy. She said she told Harriet and Rachel their father got blamed in Korea in the war. And she just didn't want them to know that their father walked out on them. And Carl's like, that's no damn excuse, man. I got both of your daughters living under my roof. And I'm only married to one of them. You don't think that drives me crazy? Marriages is like that. Now, dude, why the hell are you here? And Jimmy's like, man, I just wanted to see my kids. I wanted to give my grandson a piggyback ride. I wanted to teach Eddie how to brush that stinky fade. Carl, you didn't do it? I wanted to kidnap Judy. I'm sorry. Carl's like, huh? Jimmy's like, I didn't say anything at all. And Jimmy's like, well, I'll be leaving tomorrow, Carl. You won't have to worry about me. Carl's like, you're not going to tell him? He says, no. I'd rather them see me as a hero than the deadbeat father that I am. Because I'm a lousy dude. Carl. And Carl, he could see that deadbeat dad energy in his eyes. He's like, Jimmy, you ain't have to raise me for me to know that you was a deadbeat. I knew that. Make sure you out of here after breakfast, man. You make sure of that. And then the next day, you see Steve. This is another scene where Steve tries to make this episode about him. He failed, though. And Steve is crazy. He's dressed up like the stranger Jimmy that he met the day before, right? And Laura's like, Steve, why are you dressed like Jimmy? Steve, please, please, please. Respectfully, this episode is not about you, okay? Now get yourself a father figure and get out my house. She kicks him out, right? Laura was, the first couple seasons, Laura wasn't playing around with Steve. She was telling him what he wanted, right? And now, in the next scene, right? You see Jimmy being a creep, playing with his grandson. We now know that's his grandson, little Richie. And they're having an intimate moment. You know, you see Rachel and Harriet come down. They're like, all right, Jimmy has to leave, you know. And Richie's like, oh, I'm going to miss you. And Jimmy's like, oh, you would be such a perfect victim. But I think Judy would be more splendid. They don't really pay attention to her. So you're a baby. And that goes over little Richie's head, right? And Carl walks in. He's like, hey, yeah, the cab outside. Remember what I told you. Remember what I told you, big dog. Cab outside, buddy. And Jimmy's like, thank you for making me feel so welcome, Harriet. You know, Harriet's like, well, can't you stay one more night? This family's going to be heartbroken if you leave. And Jimmy's like, okay, you know what? Rachel and Harriet, my name isn't Jimmy Holmes. It's Jimmy Baines, and I'm your father. And they look shocked, of course. You know, they look shocked. And in the next scene, you see Harriet and Rachel on the back porch. It's rare that they show this, you know, only certain episodes they show the back porch, right? And Rachel's like, Harriet, are you okay? Harriet's saying, are you? Rachel's saying, no. Harriet's like, he dumped us, Rachel. Now he come walking back in our life. What does he want from us? Rachel, you got to understand, Rachel was only one. She was only one. So she was like, I think he wants us to forgive him. Harriet is like, well, I feel cheated, Rachel. You know, and I'm glad she said this, because it's real. She was like, I watched Laura and Carl endless times on endless days. And every time they have a moment, I always wished that me and my father had moments like that. And now you see Jimmy's eavesdropping, right? He's eavesdropping. And she's like, man, he shouldn't have walked out on us like that. You know? And Rachel's like, you right, he shouldn't have. But if we don't accept him now, we might make the same mistake he did. And Rachel, oh, Rachel. Yes, Rachel, key moment in Family Matters. Rachel say, if we don't accept him now, we may make the same mistake he did. And Rachel, you abandon your son too, but we will get on you. We will get on you. We just have to talk about your beginning first, right? And Harriet, she's just reluctant, you know? She don't know how to accept this. Like, she's not used to having an episode about her. And Rachel's definitely not used to it. With the exception of her business, she's not used to having the cameras on her, you know? And Harriet lets Rachel know, she's like, the thing that bothers me the most is that he just left and never thought about us again, you know? And Jimmy steps in the scene, and now they're about to have a overacting off. Like, it's who can overact this scene the best, you know? And they're going at it. They're going at it. Jimmy comes in. I thought about you. I thought about both of you every day of my life. I know I was wrong. And I hate myself for it. And I understand if you hate me, Harriet and Rachel. But what I want you to know, what I need you to know is that I never stopped loving you. Then he went to plan D, which is pull out a random gift that she gave you when she was 3. And he pulls out a Valentine's Day gift and gives it to Harriet. Happy Valentine's Day, Daddy. She misspelled Daddy, but she spelled Valentine's right. destined to marry a cop, right? And Harriet's like, I was 3. Nobody watching this show nor listening to this video from Randumb Rants remember anything that they did when they was 3, Jimmy. Now, you wasn't there when we needed you. Super overacting mode. Like, you've never seen Harriet like this. Please go watch this show. Please go watch this show. I'm begging you guys, right? So Jimmy says, well, I'm here now, and I want to be a part of y'all lives. That's why I'm asking you, please let me. Harriet said, I don't know if I can. And Rachel, she was 1. She was like, well, we can try. And Harriet was like, yeah, I guess we can try. And Rachel hugs him first, and then Harriet embraces him. And then the show is over. Okay? The show is over, right? And mind you, this is episode 22 of season 2. Okay? It's about 25 episodes a season. This show goes on 7 more seasons after this. Okay? This show goes on for 9 seasons. We even have 2 different Harriets. Okay? We all know what happens to Rachel, right? And we will be getting on that soon. Okay? But we never see this guy again. We never see this guy again. Okay? He did it again. He left y'all again. He did it again. Like, the stuff that Harriet has to go through is crazy. Like, dude, you're on Perfect, oh gosh, sweetie, you're on Perfect Strangers. You get your own spinoff, and only to, like, a nerd takes your show, and then your deadbeat father, oh my God, bless Harriet. Bless Harriet. Miss Rachel, bless her too, even though she's not the best mother. But yeah, I mean, you guys can see where Rachel got the abandonment from. Like, this is why she abandons little Richie throughout this series. And like I said, we gonna get on Rachel. We gonna actually pinpoint the Rachel stuff, right? But this guy's never seen ever again. They go through so many Christmas episodes, so many holiday episodes. We never, ever see this guy again. And now let me tell you why he was really at the Winslow's house. Because I know this sucker. I know this lousy excuse of a man, right? Jimmy Baines, right? I know him. This alcoholic. He around this time in the mid-90s, Harriet and Rachel, they don't know they have other siblings. See, Papa was a rolling stone. A rolling alcoholic stone that would beat on his woman, right? And he was actually going to all of his kids' houses during that time. And he had a couple, like I said, Harriet and Rachel don't know they have brothers, throughout Illinois. Now, not in Chicago, but throughout Illinois. And he was just seeing how he ran out on all of them. That's what he do. He's Jimmy Baines. And he was just seeing if any of them had kids that he could possibly, kidnap. And ladies and gentlemen, that's actually what happens to Judy Winslow, because Judy Winslow is not getting an episode on this platform. Yes, Jimmy Baines kidnapped her. Okay, milk carton and everything, right? You already know, right? Boom. Now you guys got your answer. And I'm glad you stayed to the end, and you guys got a treat. There we go. Boom. Like and subscribe. Randumb Rants.